You can hear me okay? Yeah, well, good. Great. Um, in the beginning of this, I forgot to give gratitude and thanks to John and Marcia and Robin for inviting me and for making this night happen, and for all the hard work that goes into doing the Zoom and the audio and the video. It's quite a task, so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for setting this up. It's kind of amazing that I get to sit here all the way on the East Coast and come right into all of your computers and into the Dharma Hall. I'm still kind of dumbfounded by that situation. Yeah, so the practice we just did is something that I really like to do. It's kind of have this sort of choiceless awareness practice, and it's not for everybody, and it's not for me all the time. Sometimes I get up in the morning and I sort of read how my practice should be, and so sometimes I wake up and maybe I dreamed a lot. My mind is very, very busy, and so I really need something that's stabilizing and direct and allows me to focus. And then sometimes I wake up and I'm pretty, calm and easeful, and so I do some more kind of non-direct practice. And really, it's our whole practice is a dance between the two, kind of techniques to draw the mind in and calm it, and techniques to open the mind into our nature. I began practice in the Zen tradition, and the main practice in the sitting instruction was what they called shikantaza, which means just sitting, and that was the only instruction. There was nothing else. And so if I had some issues in my meditation practice or had some questions, the instruction would always be just go sit more, go sit more, go sit more. And it became very frustrating because I didn't, and I think that's kind of the idea, is to sort of frustrate your way into some awakening experience. But my curious mind needed a little bit more instruction, and that's when I found sort of the Vipassana world, which directed me further. But I've come back to it. I've always come back to this practice of just sitting, of opening into natural awareness. And this word "natural" is something I've been exploring, especially recently. Over the past year, I've been involved in this nature, Dharma, Sangha, and training, and we go out into nature and practice, sometimes for extended periods of time, and it's a really interesting exploration. And so this word "natural" or unnatural or nature, and what is nature and what is natural, all of these questions are things I've been exploring a lot lately. And I think when we begin to look into nature or the natural world or ecology, it's really important to deepen our understanding of ourselves, because we too are nature. And I remember that when I first had the realization that I am nature, when it was pointed out to me, a while ago. It's not a recent thing. And how growing up, I was taught everything but that. Growing up in a Christian Catholic upbringing, you're kind of told that you are separate from nature, or you are to have dominion over nature, or there's this thing that you are better than, or more than nature, in a sense. At least that's the message that I got. And so when I started to explore this idea of myself as nature, it was very, very rich, and it changed my view in a lot of ways. And then especially when I got into Buddhism and the various streams of Buddhism that I've been involved with, is understanding our true nature and how that related to the natural world. And even, an old definition of the word dharma that we talk about, a lot in these in dharma circles is nature, or the natural law, or the way things are. And this is what many ancient sages, think of Lao Tzu and the Buddha and various other sages. This is what they kind of tried to do, was to understand the laws of nature, or how things are, how things were. And so going through this exploration over the past year, involved in this Nature Dharma Circle, I've been very inspired by several teachers. And one of those teachers is a man named Gil Fronsdal. He's been one of the teachers of mine over this time. And so I take a lot of what I'm about to say from some of his teachings, but also from my own exploration of these teachings. And so these sages, I like to see them as sort of naturalists. A naturalist goes into nature and sits with it in order to understand it. And so this is something that can't be forced. This can only be observed. And I think a lot of times we can get caught in sort of an engineering mindset, where we're trying to make things happen, or to force things to happen, or to create things. And I think this is where that separation starts to happen between me as a human and the natural world. From the Buddhist perspective, we're already awake. There's nothing we really have to do. In fact, the more we try to do, the further away we get from it. And so the spiritual practice is really about shedding, about taking away from, in order to get at our essence. And all of us are emergent from nature, or emergent from our true nature, or in Buddhism we might say from Buddha nature. We all have Buddha nature. We all have awake nature. We all have enlightenment at our core. And so we're already there, but there's something that gets in our way of fully realizing it. And what is this thing? Yeah. And so as humans, as we all are here, and especially as practitioners of Buddhism, there's a sort of balancing act, or a choice over what takes prominence in our lives. And we see this in the Buddhist teaching throughout. And so there are two very different systems operating within us at all times. And these two things have different characteristics that are very different from one another. One of the systems that the Buddha talked about, he talked about as artificial, or constructed, or not part of the natural working of things, or not part of alignment with nature, is how I understand it. And the other he described as, or we could describe as natural, as not constructed by the human mind, the way things are. And so, as I mentioned before, a naturalist looks at nature, to observe nature, to learn its principles, that the way it works, and then model their lives, at least in the spiritual sense, model their lives around how this nature works, to look into themselves. to understand nature that way as well. And so I look at the Buddha when he sat under the Bodhi tree as like a, he's an observer, he's a naturalist, but internally rather than externally, to learn the nature of his own mind, the patterns of his own mind. And when we think of something artificial or constructed, the word synthetic comes to mind. And the word synthetic comes from the Greek, and it actually means skilled in putting together or constructing. And so it goes along with this idea. And we as humans are very skilled at putting things together and constructing things, constructing various ideas. And this synthetic is, different, it's at odds with natural, perhaps. So something not put together by humans. And so this is the distinction we see in the Buddhist teachings: that which is put together by humans and the mind, the patterns of the mind, and that which is not. And the Buddha is kind of pointing us towards what's not put together by us humans. And we typically don't want the synthetic thing. We usually want the natural thing, the real thing. Essentially, what this means is that synthetic things don't exist on their own, right, by themselves in nature. And something to ponder is that, since we are nature, there could be an argument that everything is nature. You could take this radically inclusive view that even synthetic things are natural, because humans put them together, and humans are nature. So that could be argued here, but I'm not going to take that argument right now. And in the Pali, this word that I'm talking about is construction or synthetic or artificial. Is in Pali, this word is we call sankhara. Sankhara. It's a construction in a way that's unnatural, or not in alignment with a natural law, which is Dharma. Ajahn Sucitto, his translation I really like of sankhara is a program, like a computer program. Like there's various programs on the computer that you run that program and it does that program. There's various programs that we attend. You go to a program and you attend that program. You're taken through a program. Or Buddhadasa calls it a fabrication. Traditionally, the most common definition I hear for sankhara is a volitional formation. So a formation that we construct on purpose. And so it's the act of constructing, and it's actually the construction itself as well. And so this is what separates us. This is what takes us out, this constructing of the way things are, of the natural world. And traditionally, you see this word sankhara used as in the creation of rituals. Like there's a series of things put together to create a ritual, or a recipe. There's all these various ingredients that are put together to create one thing. So that can also be a sankhara. But as I said before, the Buddha's entire teaching was pointing us toward what cannot be constructed by humans. Because not only are we not able to construct an awakening or an enlightenment, it's already here. And we are already subject to nature. No matter how much we try to separate ourselves from nature, or control it, or engineer it, in the end we'll be unsuccessful. Nature will always win, always will win. And this sankharic idea, this construction in the Tibetan images of the wheel of life, if you look at the wheel of life, this sankharic construction is usually depicted as a potter making a pot. And this is part of the cycle of dependent origination. Things are put together into this pot, this formation. And this fabricating is a sankhara. And there's also this image of the fully awakened, or a symbol of the fully awakened, which is broken pottery shards settling at the very bottom of a very clear lake. And so this clear water is equal to awakening. And the construction has been shattered and it lies at the bottom of the very bottom of the lake. We probably maybe have heard this quote from the Buddha before. It's a very famous quote that sort of talks about this construction process and the scene of it happening. It says, "O house builder, you have been seen. You shall not build that house again. Your rafters have been broken up. Your ridgepole is demolished too." And so this destruction is an attainment in a sense. It's something that we're going for, a destruction of the sankharas, or at least a scene of the construction itself, or the process of the constructing. And the thing about these sankharas is that they're just not necessary all the time. We live in a world that's relative, that's dualistic. And so in order to get by, there's certain things we have to do. There's certain constructs that we have to live within. There's various things that are constructions that are very skillful to get through life. But I think what the Buddha is pointing to here is a scene of the process. Yeah. And seeing beyond the process. And when we're informed by this larger view, and we can see that process, then life becomes much more easeful. Yeah. Because these constructions can limit us in a very real way. And a very real way we see this is in our own practice. We have all of these techniques. The Buddha taught many, many, many techniques. But he also taught that the techniques weren't not ends in themselves. The techniques were pointing towards something. And so we can get very, very tied to certain practices or certain things. But as the Buddha taught, dharmas and the Buddha's teaching itself are also empty. They're part of the relative world. And as the Buddha, talked about in the simile of the raft, we use a raft to get over a particular river, and once we get over that river, we don't carry the raft with us. We leave it on the bank and move on. And so we can even see these constructs, these sankharas, limiting us in our very own practice. And so when we did this practice today, and we just kind of let everything go, and we sit and we feel, and we just allow natural awareness to arise, what did you experience in that? Various reactivities, some discomforts, some looking for something to land on. Yeah. I kind of sometimes I'll feel little frustrations and little things arise in my body. And the Buddha used lots and lots of nature metaphors. He was always speaking to nature and being very practical in his teachings, and encouraging practitioners to go out into the forest, out into the woods. And it shows his knowledge of this alignment with nature, of how to practice. And I really like this. What he talks about in what's called the Nava Sutta, in the Samyutta Nikaya. He talks about a hen that has laid eggs, and the hen is sitting on the eggs and incubating the eggs. And if she sits on them and is patient in the right way, the eggs will hatch. Yeah, the eggs will hatch. But if the hen sits on the eggs in a wrong way, it doesn't matter how much she wants them to hatch, they won't hatch. And this use of right and wrong can seem like a moralistic thing, but a way I like to think of it is like there's a particular tool for a particular job. So if you have a Phillips head screw, you use a Phillips head screwdriver to unscrew or to screw that screw. That's the right tool for the job. You wouldn't use, a pair of pliers to unscrew that thing, or a hammer. You'd use a screwdriver. So there's a right and a wrong. There's a right tool. There's a right tool. There's a right way. There's a right alignment with nature. And if we learn from nature, we learn that proper alignment. The Buddha talks about in this sutta that if the hen sits on the eggs in the right, correct way, and doesn't want the eggs to hatch, they'll still hatch because she's sitting on them in the correct way. And so it's really interesting that there's this alignment, there's this nurturing. And this also speaks to how nature works. I really love this line from the Tao Te Ching. It says, nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished. And so this hen sits on the eggs. She's not engineering the eggs to hatch. She's allowing the eggs. She's creating the conditions for the eggs to hatch. She's allowing them to incubate. She's allowing them to gestate and go through this process. Yeah. And so in the same way, people who practice well in the Dharma, if you're aligning yourself with the Buddha's teachings and you're practicing well and you're not clinging and you're doing these things, a fruition naturally happens, and it can't be hurried and it can't be engineered. It's a natural process, like you're incubating something. And so if we live out the Buddha's teachings fully, even if we don't want to become awake, we will awaken. And so there's this process that's once set in motion and incubated that will eventually come to fruition. And it can't be forced. It can't be forced. And so there's this process of growth, this process of development. The word here is bhavana, which means cultivation or developing or allowing. And it's really interesting if you look at the Buddha's life. He went through a very long period of trying to engineer enlightenment or try to engineer his way out of suffering. He went out into the woods and found various teachers and learned these techniques where he achieved these incredible states. And he was such a good practitioner that the teachers asked him to be their teacher. He became so good at these states, but they didn't lead to the end of suffering. Though he was achieving these things, he couldn't engineer his way out of suffering. So he went out and tried all these ascetic practices, torturing his body and doing all these things, trying to engineer, trying to force his way out of suffering, trying to force his way into understanding true nature, and it didn't work. And then he went and sat under the Bodhi tree and let go of everything, allowed nature to take over, sat under the tree, watched his mind, became patient. Yeah. Allowed for a gestational period, an incubation period. And then the awakening just naturally happened. He didn't do anything. Yeah. And after he became awakened, he touched the earth, and the earth acknowledged that alignment. Many of us have probably grown gardens or attempted to from seed or planted seeds for flowers or whatever. And we talk about we grow these plants, but we don't really grow it. We don't really grow something. We can't possibly do that. We merely create the conditions for the seed to sprout and grow. So we make sure the soil is nourishing. We make sure the seed gets enough water and the proper light and the proper temperature and that it's cared for. And then the natural process of the fruition happens on its own. It sprouts and grows, and maybe there's some fruit or some flowers that come from it. We didn't make it grow. We just created the proper conditions for the natural process to unfold. And that's what we're doing in our practice. If we sit and we become natural, we can implement various techniques, but ultimately it's a letting go and allowing for our natural awakening to emerge. And it will emerge. Fruition will emerge. One of the things the Buddha talks about often, I don't know how often, I'm not sure how often, but one of the common reference points the Buddha uses to explain this sort of care is he uses the term yoni, which means womb, or the fundamental source for something, or the matrix, which can mean mother. So this you think of a womb, it allows for the development or the growth of the baby. So that it allows for a natural process to occur. Yeah. Once there's a pregnancy, then that natural process just unfolds. And then going further, the Buddha talked about yoniso manasikara. So that term yoni, womb, manasikara, is mind, or it's the doing of the mind, the activities or the intellect or the mental activities. And yoniso again comes from the womb, from a deep source within. My teacher Kittasaro translates this as placing the mind and its activities in the womb of awareness, yoniso manasikara, in the womb of awareness. And so there's this idea of this womb of awareness, this womb of knowing that we're within, and there's this allowing of a natural process, of a natural gestation to naturally occur. And so we sit, we allow, and we watch, and we allow. Sankharas are products of a clinging of the mind. It's an attempt to create solidity or certainty in that which is not certain. And the mind becomes free when they're shattered, when that pot is shattered and floats to the bottom of the lake of clear and open awareness. And so we provide this support, we provide a place for a flow of the inner qualities that come from this really deep source, our own Buddha nature, our own nature. So this idea of allowing rather than trying to engineer. And there's this really relaxing quality that comes from this. That even if I try, the harder I try, the further I get away from it. And so when I'm sitting in practice, I keep that in mind. I'm allowing, I'm creating space, I can relax. And it can just, all the stress and all of the trying, all of the effort can dissipate, can cascade off of you. There is a right effort. There is an effort to get to the cushion. There's an effort to learn. There's an effort to do things. But once we get there, there's only so much we can do. There's an effort from coming back to the breath. There's an effort to the body. There's an effort to doing all of those techniques. But ultimately, those techniques are there to be let go of. And so these sankharas typically show up as a reactivity. Yeah. They come, things come, we react. And these reactions are a product of this attempt to create solidity. When our solidity is threatened, we react to defend. I know I'm trying to come to a close here because I know we really have limited amounts of time. So, so I'll close with this. Yeah. And so when we begin to notice this reactivity, we begin to notice these constructions, and we begin to relax, the mind begins to become more still. Again, like I was talking about in the meditation, not like a ice cube, not still like that, but a stillness that is fluid. The pond that's still, it has all kinds of animals within it, like little tiny microscopic things. All are allowed to swim freely within this still pool. Yeah, all those things are allowed to move. The hen sits on the eggs, and the eggs are allowed to gestate and go through their natural processes. Yeah, and the natural processes emerge from that gentle holding. And so something inside of us wants to be born. And that's our true nature. Yeah. And so how can we hold that? How can we hold that? So awakening wants to be born. It's a natural process. These are natural qualities. And they're beautiful qualities. I'll close here with this quote. Try to be mindful. It's Ajahn Chah. Try to be mindful and let things take their natural course. Then your mind will become still in any surroundings, like a clear forest pool. All kinds of wonderful, rare animals will come to drink at the pool, and you will clearly see the nature of all things. You will see many strange and wonderful things come and go, but you will be still. This is the happiness of the Buddha. Thank you all so much. I'd like to open this up to any questions or comments or any insights that you'd like to share.
And I am Robin Hennon, staff here at Mountain Stream, and I will be taking questions from the in-person audience. Does anyone have a question right now? All right, and then Marcia, will you put it on gallery view so we can see the attendees via Zoom?
And we don't have I will. And Robin, if you could hold the mic a little closer to you. It takes me a minute to get it.
Yeah, no worries. We might need to replace this battery, but I can also turn up the microphone. Hi, everyone. Someone from our Zoom audience does anyone have a question, comment? Oh, we've got Joyce and Carol. Go ahead, Carol, or Joyce. Yeah, Carol.
Carol. So at first your talk led me to a lot of questioning of like, what is limiting me? listening to a certain number of Dharma talks, reading too many books, maybe too many guided meditations. I mean, things like that. So, and then you said that by trial and error, the Buddha tried all these different techniques, and then he sat under the Bodhi tree, and did nothing. So after I'm looking at this and I'm saying, questioning, how do I let go of these techniques, or how do I let go, or which do I let go of? What? So I don't know if there's a question there or if there's an answer, but it's a big question. It's a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question, and I don't necessarily have an answer for you. I'm one that likes to read books and study and watch videos and things like that. And I do notice that there's something there that it can be a distraction. It's like there is a striving within me that's trying to get something from it. I think also it makes me think of my teacher Kittasaro, who was a monastic under Ajahn Chah for many years, and in those settings in the Thai forest tradition, there are no books. There's a discouragement from reading or consuming anything, and Ajahn Chah used to say that the only book worth reading was the book of the heart. And so his whole thing was like, everything you need is right here. You don't need anything outside of yourself, because it's all right here. Not to discourage anybody from reading books. That's just what Ajahn Chah said, and none of us are monastics here, I don't think. But yeah, it's a good question. The Buddha did say that he was doing mindfulness of the breath, I think, under the Bodhi tree. There was a little technique there. But yeah, that's the message I get is, the Buddha tried a lot of things so we don't have to. And there's, that's, ultimately, we're not going to find the answers in books. We're only going to find it through our own personal experience. But there's a lot of wise people who have written some really good books that can give us lots of insight. So I don't know if that helps, but I think something to look for is, and I look for it in myself, and I notice often, is really, ultimately, clinging is the problem. Clinging to anything, the clinging to teaching, the clinging to anything is going to block us from the realization of our true nature. And so when I'm reading or consuming, I look for that knowing of when I'm when I'm actually using this material to avoid, or or when something's actually leading me away from realization. I don't know if that helps, but that's just what came to mind for me.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Carol, for a great question. All right, we've got a question in person, and just state your name and talk into it like that.
Okay. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the Sangha, and the meditation was really good, and the talk also. So thank you very much.
Thank
I have
you.
a question. I liked in the meditation, you were with the body, and then, as you said, in your daily practice, after you feel grounded, you then go to a space of choicelessness.
Mm-hmm.
To your practice, you said that's basically your practice.
The mic was kind of going in and out of here, but let me repeat and see if what you said. Were you were saying, you were commenting on when I talked about how I practice,
Well,
depending on how my mind, and that's how I practice.
Yeah, I mean, tonight you guided us, which I really liked, of being with sensation, and once you felt you were here, then to go to expand that to a choicelessness, to be in without any, just be,
Hmm.
and choiceless meditation. So I'm just was wondering, that's your practice, that's how you practice.
Yeah, that's how I practice. I kind of, see what I need. I usually start with breath, breath practice, body, feel the body. I always I like to check in with the, just bring my attention to my seat, the earth, just check in there for just a few moments, and then breath, and then I might stay with the breath for a while, the body, and then I'll move out into something more expansive. But sometimes I just need to stay with the breath. So it just depends on every day. And then I like to do some metta, some heart practice at the end as well for sitting. So it changes just depending on, because this is always changing. So this thing. So I just I work with it in that way. But yeah, I think, like I said, ultimately the techniques are they're I'd like to think of them as like walls we can like lean on, and then we can kind of push away from the wall, and you know, and when things kind of get a little bit out of control, we can lean back on that wall and then come back, and you know. But when I first started practicing, it was, that's I was just given the just sitting, and it was really difficult for me to sit with that, and so the techniques are very, very helpful. But yeah, that's what I do every time I sit.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah.
Anyone from the virtual audience have a question, comment? We got like 3 more minutes.
It looks like Rick has a question. Go ahead, Rick, and unmute yourself.
Hi,
Hello,
Rick.
hello, everybody. My question is, hi. My question is Sankara. How do you identify when you're in one, when you're uh, just so you know how to break through it, or at least
Hmm.
identify it?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest questions there is, I think, because most of them are unconscious. And so we're kind of always operating in this sankharic thing, because everything, it really is a construction. So, um, yeah, it's hard to know that there's not just one sign, everything in a sense is a sankhara. I know we're always, we're, creatures of patterns, like we have, we are a product of a lifetime of conditioning, a lifetime of sankharas, and so there could be a sankharic behavior pattern from when I was 2 years old or 6 years old, or it could be like there's all of these things operating, and so one of the things that meditation reveals are these sankharas, and so bringing these unconscious patterns into awareness, and so one of there's various ways, and one of the ways I've identified them in myself is through reactivity, like when I feel myself getting reactive or defensive, I know that there's a pattern or something there that I'm trying to defend, and like investigating that, and this is where we get very much into Buddhist psychology and these things. But I think whenever you have like tensions or gripping, or when things show up somatically, that's a sign that there's some kind of pattern there that's being clung to, or that's operating. That's why I like that translation of program. Like I'm running a program. Like there's various programs in this computer here, and certain things trigger those certain programs, and yeah, we're kind of always operating within them, but there are, perhaps there are skillful ones and there's unskillful ones too. So they're not all bad, But so there's a lot really to unpack there, but mostly the way I notice it is through defensiveness or reactivity. Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, I kind of messed up the schedule here, but I'll go ahead and do a quick dedication of merit, and then I'll hand it over for the announcements. But thank you all so much. This has been really wonderful. I love exploring the Dharma and talking about Dharma and practicing the Dharma and to be in community. And just for a moment here, just drawing some attention to the heart. And just allowing this heart, the center of love and inclusion, to just radiate out into all directions, a sense of peace and inclusion, including specific people who need care, or just a general sense of peace out to all beings. And may the merit of this practice, of our time together, ripple out and affect all beings in a very positive way. May all beings awake. May all beings be safe, happy, and free. Thank you.